Webcam microphone.
Don't admit it.
Webcam microphone. Up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, wrestles and fondle slab of choice, and internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter whether the cartoon they rip as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint on another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man.
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
It's like, damn sure, no, I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for...
That's that.
For a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is that, and I am live on a Tuesday night. It is December the 23rd. Happy 101st birthday to that piece of paper that was signed by President Woodrow Wilson, bringing us the beautiful Federal Reserve that we all are subject to now. Anyway, this is the Ochelli Effect. I'm Chuck Ochelli, your host, probably slightly overdriven, overmodulated, never duplicated. Oh boy, it is a migraine headache kind of day. So, it is what it is. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in on UCY.TV, especially if you've gone over to the website at UCY.TV/TOE. I do appreciate that. Also appreciate all the people who have been harassing me on Facebook lately. Thank you very much for that. It's all in good fun, I guess. You can find Chuck Ochelli. The Ochelli Effect has a page over there, and there's also a discussion group devoted to the Ochelli Effect radio show. For those who are going to remain with Facebook, who think that there's any sort of revolutionary thing that's going on as of January 1st, I don't see it as anything other than disclosure for them, the Zuckerbergs of the world. Anyways... So, Tuesday night, I'm going to do my usual thing, and we're going to devote the first hour to Roger Landry as soon as I can get him on the line. He is the founder and main ranter extraordinaire over at thelibertybeacon.com. That's all one word, thelibertybeacon.com. Slowing it down for those of you who can't hear at a fast pace. Anyway, in the second hour, we'll have a stand-up comedian and always an interesting guest, Terry Joyce, who does the Freedom of Joyce radio show, blog, all that kind of good stuff, seemingly involved in some interesting things. And who knows, maybe we'll even get another glimpse into the adult world films that she's been involved in as well. Who knows what's going to happen? It's the Ochelli Effect. There is never a script. Hell, there's hardly even a game plan to this show. But again, thanks to everybody for listening, or at least feigning to listen. Anyhow, yeah, like I said, it was an eventful day for me because of the wonderful world of migraine headaches that I am prone to and all that good stuff. Let's see. Can we add him in? We might be able to add him in. I'm not sure. I know I have an article prepared. I know I have that kind of stuff because he does usually do one of those wonderful articles that he's generally the author of or has been recently produced by the Liberty Beacon. Let's just see. Okay. Hey, Roger, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, and how are you?
Despite the migraine headache, sir, I'm breathing. How about that? Anyway, as I was saying, Wow, okay. My Skype just did something strange. Can you still hear me? Maybe not. Well, hopefully I'm still on the air. That's an oddity. No, I'm not going to let it trip me up. Like I said, generally speaking, Roger Landry comes on the show and we do one of those articles from the Liberty Beacon. That's all one word, thelibertybeacon.com. I do have a link to drop into the chat room as soon as we're sure we're ready.
Hello?
There you are. Okay.
I don't know why I went away, and then all of a sudden I'm back.
Yeah, I saw the Skype did something weird, and just, you know how it rotates around the little tiles now?
Yeah.
It kind of did that, and it couldn't make up its mind whether to put the one regular tile I have up there or your tile or whatever, and it rotated around a few times and then seemed to freeze up. So I could hear that I'm still on the air because I can hear that minor hum that comes back. But
is that an A minor or a C minor?
Well, you know what? It's one of those inaudible to most people kind of tones. I think they ignore it. But hey, by some miracle, also since it did the little loop-de-loop on the Skype, your sound quality's improved greatly too. So I don't know. Maybe they just the NSA just did us a favor.
Well, something. A little bit of an update here. I think every article we have done a show on, or I have brought to a show, has been something I've written. We have referred to other articles that have been given to us by contributors. But every time we do an article on your show, it's something I've written.
Okay. You know what? My memory is a little clogged up because we have covered a great deal of ground in 2014 on my show.
Well, I get to be your age. You know, I might make those kind of excuses. Oh, wait a minute! I'm 16 years older than you. I'm pulling your leg, my friend.
That's okay. You're actually about 18 years older than me, but it's okay.
Not a problem. Age to me is totally irrelevant.
Well, right, because you can easily be at my ostensive age and be presenting with a whole lot more problems than somebody who's 30 years older, especially nowadays, right?
Yeah, and you could be 70 years old and wearing diapers and drooling all over yourself.
Well, this is true. I mean, I often think of my one great aunt Elsa, who lived to be 103 years of age. All the way up to and including her 100th birthday, though, she was, as far as my entire lifetime went, as I recall it, she always had at least her one bottle of Jack Daniels a day and a couple of packs of Pall Malls, and she was healthy as anything. Just when she got to be 103 for some reason or other, she simply decided that she had done enough living and sort of gave up all at once. It was really, really strange. But vitality stuck with her because I have this feeling that that's the kind of thing that happens when you eat, real food and, aren't bombarded by all of the electronic things that we're bombarded by nowadays. I seem to believe that we might have a better chance at a greater life expectancy.
I also think that has something to do with whether or not you have a purpose. I notice nowadays, and especially in, say, starting the mid-'70s on up, that a lot of people, once they retired, and this is especially applicable to career service people. Did you know the life expectancy of a retired military individual is about 50% of what it is of somebody who retires in the private sector? Because you go through such intense purpose for decades, and then you shut that off. And once that purpose is shut off, I believe that the will to live is weakened.
One thing you have to say about our government, too, is that, our government, and I do hold up the air quotes when I say our, not government, but our government as it stands. One of the very consistent things is that they don't pay people without a purpose. They don't supply that job without a purpose. There is always some sort of a return on the investment they make in human resources or anything else. Now, it may not be a return that you or I generally understand right away. It may seem as though there's no plausible standard return coming back for some of that money. But believe it, every time they give a paycheck or a dime to anybody, they have purposes in mind. And so you spend your entire life serving a continuous purpose because they don't give you a break. And then, I imagine that there's sort of a withdrawal of having such purpose in one's life. I mean, whether it is sort of imaginary or it is nefarious in one way or another, the reality is that once that purpose is removed, or once you sort of, have your reason for being extracted from your being, you do seem to collapse like a house of cards. I mean, that's one of those things that happens. Very much like, married people seem to live a bit longer, although that seems counterintuitive. I'm thinking of my first marriage again, excuse me. But the thing is, you would think that especially married men would want to leave this earth a little quicker. But again, sorry, I go back to that first marriage. But the thing is, when you have somebody that's relying on you and you have that purpose one way or another, it seems as though that causes your life expectancy to rise because the simple act of having a reason to live causes you to live. It's an odd causality in the human condition, and one of those things that's definitely worthy of further exploration, I think, because who knows, maybe if we provide good people a long enough and strong enough purpose, we could reach something like immortality in a natural sense, you know what I mean?
Well, I do believe that as much as the physical body needs to be nourished and kept healthy, that the mental or the psyche of an individual needs to be nourished and kept healthy as well. And I do believe that the mental aspects of an individual do play in their longevity or their mortality.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think these things are self-evident. Now, of course, we're going to discuss a topic tonight where longevity, wonderfulness, or immortality definitely don't enter into the discussion, because we definitely don't want to see the subjects of what we're going to discuss tonight achieve immortality, and nor would they by definition if they were searching to do the clean, honest, and goodly thing upon this earth and their fellow man. But wait a minute, that's right. We're talking about the quote-unquote commander-in-chief tonight, so, excuse me, I digress. I had all sorts of thoughts there, but I've decided that I'll adopt what my grandmother used to say to me, which was, if you don't have anything nice to say, try and keep your opinions to yourself.
So are you telling me that I shouldn't go on with my article, then?
Oh, no.
Well, you just said if I haven't got anything good to say, don't say anything.
But Roger,
I'm about to tell you something. This ain't good.
No, but the thing is that I was speaking for myself and only for that moment. Believe me, it's just a momentary lapse of anguish with the controllers, my friend. It'll pass.
All of my friends...
Matter of fact, it has passed already, Roger. Don't worry about it. Okay.
all of my friends know me to be a kind and respectful individual. All the people I rant against know me to be one of the biggest buttholes, and I could have used another word, but out of respect I didn't, on the planet. I'm not about to be a nice person during this discussion or by getting this article out.
Well, right, and you know what it is, though, Roger, is that it's because we don't believe in excuses, which is the is the reality here. And of course, links right to the article title, which I said before, I'll be dropping it in the chat, and I will get to that right now as soon as the browser cooperates with me. But anyway, I'll just read the title of the article, and it was published on December 18th. Just for the clarification of the listener, but it is Commander-in-Chief ellipsis points, or purveyor of unbelievable excuses. And which Commander-in-Chief? Oh, well, probably our friend Barry, and not Barry. And not Barry Prince, who's a guy I like and appears on the show all the time and all that, and a good guy, a friend of mine. No, not that Barry, but
Toronto.
the other Barry. Yes, Satoru, Saranto, Barack Hussein.
Whatever, yeah.
You know what? I don't care what his name is any more than I care about, any more than I care about a great deal of the other things that are often postulated about out there on the internet. The reality is that he's part of the sickening control system, and is definitely steering the boat, as it were, to the rocky shores. So, again, the title of the article. Commander-in-Chief, ellipsis points, or purveyor of unbelievable excuses. As soon as you are ready, Roger, I am ready. Of course, I love this graphic here, which is a rather stern, intense-looking Lord Cousin Barry, President Barack, whatever you want to call him, with this look on his face, which is kind of tantamount to somebody having a bowel movement, but it's okay, with a wonderful little graphic that says, "It's not my fault."
Well, again, you started off your little rant there, which I do appreciate, with the fact that we don't particularly care for excuses. And we also heard a little bit of your opinion on whether or not he is an actual purveyor of what's going on the planet today. And what we're going to get into is a commentary. And again, when I do a commentary, most of this is an opinion, but it's an educated opinion. You've got to remember, I spent a lot of my life working for the military-industrial complex, working for the military, working for the Department of Defense. I spent a lot of my life answering to individuals who fell directly under the commander-in-chief. I know the responsibilities. I know what this individual must do in order to fulfill his constitutional responsibilities. So let's get into this. Let's get into this rant, because it's really more of a rant than a commentary, but it's all based on a very uncomfortable reality that we're living in today. This commentary is not based on a breaking story, but it is based on a culmination of information that has bothered me for some time. And I've just elicited to that. And to the point, I felt a serious need to dredge it up and splash it before the eyes of all, and all too forgiving or disconnected people. We the people. It has to do with the credibility of the supposed most powerful man on this planet, and the fact that things just don't add up. So let me start this off with a question. When is a commander-in-chief not a commander-in-chief? Good question. It is so easy to blame someone else. We have all been guilty of this, at least at one point in our lives or another. But we are not the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military force in human history. We are not responsible for the safety and protection of an entire country of over 300 million people in times of chaos and crisis. Excuses are easily overlooked by individuals whose actions provide minimal or extremely localized ramification. But to expect anything less than focused dedication from our most powerful leaders is suicidal. This is their job. You don't get to the highest office in the land due to an extreme lack of focus. Or do you? If you were to believe President Obama, ISIS came out of nowhere and splashed on the global scene as one of the, if not the biggest terrorist threat in history. And he was not informed. Freaking really? Now there's two pictures captioned under what I just read. The first one is a picture of Obama with a very surprised look on his face, and the caption reads, Mr. Obama says his intel director failed to warn him about the ISIS threat in Syria. Really? The facts are, the second picture, the second meme, has Mr. Obama looking rather miffed or confused. And the caption reads, but the fact is, he has skipped over 50% of all of his daily intel briefs that have included important information on ISIS as far back as 2012. The actual number is 57.9%, or just about, for argument's sake, 60%. Okay? It's almost 3 out of 5 vital briefings skipped. This is the man who dictates our military policy abroad and as it relates to the protection of the homeland. In a time of chaos and crisis, he has blown off a majority of his vital briefings. For what? Is this even acceptable? Let's put aside for this discussion, because this is an entirely different subject unto itself. Mm-hmm. The fact that most of the world is aware by now of the CIA and U.S. military ties directly to ISIS for training and funding, and concentrate on a president who can't even muster up a credible lie, unless he is in fact the ultimate puppet with no task of responsibility that does not take place in front of a camera, because only then would his lies actually be true. There is no way in hell circumstances of such overwhelming significance were ever kept from the commander-in-chief. This I personally know to be a fact.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing about it. Feigning surprise over this, right, is certainly... It points to one of two things, as you've just so aptly put it, okay? It points to one of two things. Either a complete ineptness in doing the job, or the reality that maybe he does actually have no knowledge of it because he's actually got no responsibility for it because he's actually not in charge of anything.
So if it's not on the script, on the teleprompter, in front of the audience he's speaking to, he's not aware of it? I don't truly believe that, and you'll find out the more I read, okay?
Well, you know, that may be, but here's the thing, just up to this point in the article. It is possible that the actor selling you the pimple cream does not know that it causes psychosis. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, and you know what I'm referring to, right? There's actually been studies where people have been pitching, you know, this stuff for acne and everything, and then they find out that it actually has a serious side effect, holding up air quotes again, where people do actually endure changes in their brain chemistry and all of that from these chemicals soaking into their dermis, as it were. And here's the thing. I don't think that the corporate pitchmen that have been assigned to sell this product were fully aware of that, or at least most of them weren't. So it's a possibility that Obama, as the corporate figurehead pitchman, could be completely unaware of all this.
I would tell you that could be a possibility, but it's nothing that I would believe at all. I'm all too familiar with what goes on within, especially the military hierarchy. And I would tell you, and I will tell you as we continue, because you're actually broaching into areas that I'm going to get into, that this commander-in-chief would have been informed, and I will explain that to you. Okay?
Oh, yeah, I was just setting it up for you, sir.
Oh, you set it up. Policy directly related to the rise and rampage of this organization across the Middle East, including countries we are still engaged in with a military presence of some significance like Iraq, would be the top priority of every briefing, including supplementary briefings had he happened to miss a scheduled daily briefing, about 60% of them, but who's counting? Isn't this the same man who also went to bed while our ambassador and several other brave Americans were being brutally killed in Libya because he had a fundraiser to attend the following morning? Isn't this the same guy who claims ignorance for the balance of that fiasco? didn't he also shift the blame in this circumstance to others, such as Clinton, claiming he was unaware of much that transpired until after the fact? Well, how the hell can you be informed if you are in bed sleeping while high-ranking American officials and military heroes are crying out and begging for help, being ignored, and then being slaughtered? Are these the priorities once again the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military force ever to exist on this planet must have? And under that sits another meme. And it is a picture of Obama's face in the sky. It is a picture of the ambassador's face in the sky. And Benghazi, the consulate burning. And the caption is, while he slept, 4 brave men were left there to die. Why do we still, after over a year of debating the issue, have masses of illegal aliens swarming across the southern border, allowing who knows excuse me, what dangers across? Terrorists, murderers, disease, to the soft underbelly of America. Because basically that's what it is right now, an unprotected, soft underbelly of America. Why do we still, for all intents and purposes, have an almost wide open border? Why have the Border Patrol been made to stand down on multiple occasions or had their presence intentionally weakened to a point of almost ineffectiveness? Why is this president failing his constitutional duty to protect the American people by sealing the border, all the while passing the buck again to an inept Congress? Congress was never needed to seal the border. He, as commander-in-chief, could at any point in time send troops or National Guard to the border to supplement the Border Patrol and stem the tide of criminals invading American soil. This is his most prominent mandate as our president, to protect American soil and sovereignty from foreign enemies. Sure, to make immigration policy or law, yeah, Congress is integral, but not to seal the border. So why, even to this day, hasn't he? But again, it's not his fault. It's the fault of Congress. Again, he passes the buck and America suffers. This all leads to several possibilities. And this is what you were discussing, Jeff.
Right.
Either he truly believes Americans are so dumbed down, propagandized, or buried in adoration for him as to have total faith in anything that comes out of his mouth, or his credibility has sunk to the ultimate low point where passing the buck for his ineptitudes is now an acceptable function of the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military force ever to exist on this planet. Yes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and the above images that I described to you in amplifying information present a blatant look into the priorities of this individual. These are not the only cases of failure or passing the buck. Only the most recent and blatant. It is obvious even to the most casual of observers that the priorities that should do not focus with any significance on you and me or the safety of America, but portray more the character of a disenfranchised slacker or bit player in the grand scheme of things. But then most of us, including my friend Chuck, we're already painfully aware of this, but basically just not the true extent of it in most cases. Which president has the most tea times? I'm going to tell you. Well over 1,200 hours on the golf course and counting. Or the most opulent vacations. Not the most vacation days, because Bush beat him on that. I'm talking about the most money spent in a time where America is financially stumbling and about to fall flat on its face. The opulence of the vacations taken by the first family has put to shame anybody to sit in the White House. Even though the world and this country are falling apart all around us at a quicker pace than any time in recent history. Are these valid questions? In light of the images and information I presented to you, I would have to connect the dots and say yes. But what I'm about to tell you takes the cake. And let me preface that just a little bit. Do you remember the big argument we had across this country, including the mainstream media, on gun control? Do you remember a liberal, a bleeding heart liberal, the prince of liberals, just the biggest liberal I can even think of, Piers Morgan, okay, screaming that we should all give our guns up. We should stop bellyaching and listen to our president and give our guns up. Well, when Piers Morgan, again, of all bleeding heart liberals, ultra-liberals, comes down on Obama with the power of a pile driver for his lackadaisical performance and so-called leadership of the free world, this shows blatantly just how far the president has fallen from the graces of those who once supported him without question. I'm going to give you an excerpt from Piers Morgan's blast of Obama in a Daily Mail editorial. His first addresses Obama's appearances on 60 Minutes, blaming the rise of ISIS machine, or the ISIS machine, on lack of proper intelligence from the department he oversees. Again, he's the boss. Who do you go to when a department fails? I've been a department head for over 30 years of my life, and it was always my fault. What a gross embarrassment to the abilities of the U.S. intelligence if Obama is being transparent. This is Piers Morgan saying this. However, we know that lawmakers were warned some time ago about the dangers of growing militant faction, being ISIS. It's just that our president avoided the memo. Pierce goes on to point out that he managed to attend only 42.1% of his daily intelligence briefings. It seems unimaginable that Obama would have the gall to blame his intelligence agencies for failure to emphasize the threat of ISIS. Now, Pierce goes on. He's not done. Remember, this is the guy who stuck by him as a president tried to take an inalienable right, something granted, not granted to us, but something stipulated within our Bill of Rights and the Constitution, the Second Amendment. He stuck by him with all of his guns. And yes, pun intended. But Pierce goes on, okay? Far from making America stronger, Obama has made the world's greatest military power look weak. He's right. This is Pierce talking. America fears terrorism, but terrorism doesn't fear America. They provoke us without regard to the political threats that we will poke at them, okay, from the suits in Washington. And the top suit is photographed goofing off on the golf course mere minutes after addressing the beheading of James Foley. Whether it was a true beheading or not, he addresses the American public, switches into his khakis, and goes out and plays the clown. Literally, there's pictures of it, of him playing the clown on the golf course. Pierce finished his op-ed by comparing Obama to professional golfer Rory McIlroy in his enthusiasm for the sport. It's just that McIlroy does not have the security of the free world on his shoulders. Again, Pierce Morgan, quote, "It's time he got off the damn golf course, got up to speed with his intelligence briefings, and focused on wiping out ISIS before they wipe out more of the people he serves." All right, so, a couple of questions for you, okay? Is it time to fire the entire intelligence mechanism of America for failing so miserably in their assigned tasks to keep their commander-in-chief informed of matters of regional or global significance? Failing to keep American dignitaries safe and alive? Or do we fire the Border Patrol for not doing their job? How many people must fall to protect the mask the obviously inept actions of a failing commander-in-chief? How many passes does this guy get? I will close with this last inquiry of ultimate conspiracy. When the world keeps turning, but nothing is ever his fault, if, as it surely appears, he, via ignorance, or not being in the loop on so many occasions, or failing his constitutional responsibilities to protect the mainland and the sovereignty of this country from invasion. And believe me, my friends, there is an invasion on our southern border. Is not the man in the driver's seat, the leader captaining this ship, protecting this nation as its elected commander-in-chief, just who the hell is? And that is the scariest question in this entire and very blatant commentary.
Well, and that is the question. Now, look, let's first qualify a couple of things. I have no objection to firing, removing, or destroying the intelligence complex as it exists.
But not for the reasons he has stipulated.
Exactly. Not stipulating to this being the causality for doing so. Now, other people will say, and I'm very familiar with this argument, other people will say that he's not the first president to sit there and blatantly go out on the golf course no matter what's going on. I mean, after all, we were all treated to the wonderful antics of George W. Bush sitting there and saying, being very stern and intense about, how we're going to have to deal with the terrorists, which are everywhere and all over the place, and we have to deal with these terrorists, evil doers and all of that. Now watch this drive. We all remember that clip. We all remember that guys like Gerald Ford spent plenty of time on the golf course. We all remember that, you want to talk about clowning and semi-physical activity. Remember Billy Clinton's jogs that he would take to McDonald's. I mean, there's plenty of clowning to be had out there. There's also even the whole, well, maybe he's just sitting back and allowing his advisors to do a lot of the work because he's delegated authority and all that kind of good stuff, sort of like an Eisenhower would have done or a Reagan would have done.
Oh,
and of course,
I gotta stop you right there. I gotta stop you right there, okay? He is, by constitutional mandate, the commander-in-chief. Mm-hmm. There are certain levels where delegation is beyond reasonable. And this encroaches into that. Now, I'm going to let you finish your rant, and then what I want to do is pick, and I know how you feel, and I know what you're saying, but then I want to pick that argument apart. Believe me, I do.
Oh, I'm handing it to you for exactly that purpose. This is not my argument, okay? This is a matter of, this is very much what people out there say when you make these kind of complaints. Okay, so obviously Roger's just a right-wing sympathizer and wants to go after Obama because everybody wants to go after Obama, and some of them will even go to the absolutely illogical absurdity that this is based on a racial issue, that you just don't like the fact that there's a black man in charge, and that this is what it's all about, and it's just you following the right-wing drones right on over the ridge with the rest of the cattle. This is not the reality of what's going on here. I have the very same complaints that you do. In fact, this is mild what you've done here.
I am not a neocon. I am not a progressive liberal. Mm-hmm. I am neither. I railed against Bush. I rail against Clinton. I rail against Bush Sr. I rail against each and every one of them for what they perpetrated on this country. And what that entire argument that you just put so eloquently, and I realize they're not your viewpoints, okay? Mm-hmm. That entire argument is every bit as guilty as what Obama has perpetrated on the American people. It is a pack of excuses.
Exactly.
That's all it is. And now let me pick it apart.
Go ahead.
All right? I'll go back to Gerald Ford. How many wars was this country involved in during the term of Gerald Ford?
Well, he did kind of put the cap on Vietnam.
That's it. One. Okay? How many wars were we involved in when Clinton was in office?
Well, technically speaking, none. A few actions.
How many wars were we involved in when Bush Sr. was in office?
One.
How many wars were we involved in when Clinton was in office? Again, we come to none. How many wars were we involved in when Bush was in office? Two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and both of those were relatively quick strikes, and hostilities have pretty much stopped. Most of the insurgent pushback didn't come till several years later, after they had had a chance to dig out of the rubble and put together some sort of an insurgent force.
Right. Very conservatively, since the 1970s, since Ford put the cap on Vietnam, since that happened, we have not been involved in a protracted war engagement of any type up until Bush W. Yeah.
All right,
so
now
that's the reality of the situation. So until we came to post 9/11 world, we were not involved in any sort of protracted warfare. There was, of course, there was Somalia. There was the, Grenada, Panama, these different incursions that went on. There was Desert Storm, obviously, which, lasted about a month. There was all of these little things that happened. And these are, realities. This is what occurred. But never again was a protracted warfare had until 2003, realistically.
All right, I really need to get into this because I'm drooling over here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, now, we have a president, a commander-in-chief, who has perpetrated hostilities that are still ongoing. And anybody who tells you we do not have boots on the ground in Libya is an idiot. Anybody who tells you we don't have boots on the ground in the Sudan is an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of them. Anybody who tells you there isn't American boots on the ground in Syria, you're an idiot. Whether they're CIA, whether they're special forces, they're there.
And we're also aware of deployments. Yep, and we're also aware of deployments to other parts of Africa, which are supposedly under the guise of humanitarian purposes. Go ahead.
Okay, we have boots on the ground in Afghanistan. We have boots on the ground in Iraq. Okay, we have boots on the ground in more nations today, perpetrating hostilities directed from the United States, not against the United States, from the United States, than at any point in the history of this country since World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Couple that with the fact that we have an economy that is collapsing, not a joke, literally collapsing, a dollar that is collapsing. We have a political standing in the world that is a joke. We have a healthcare system that is collapsing. We have a middle class that is collapsing.
Wait, Roger, wait, hold on, because economic recovery is happening, isn't it?
Only to those who have their head buried so far up their butt that their attitude is as crappy as it'll ever get.
Oh, okay, well, but hey, let's put that aside. Isn't the dollar doing really well?
All right.
Look, what I'm trying to tell you is that we see the reality of these things happening. This is the truth about what's happening. But there's still in some amazing leap of hubris trying to sell us on the idea that, no, we're still that shining beacon. Everything is fine.
But I'm not done.
Oh.
I'm not even done.
Okay.
Don't we claim the gold medal prize as the sickest society on the planet?
Oh, well,
Also,
of course.
don't we have U.S. government agencies under his direct control, meaning the CDC, the EPA, and the FDA, that are committing heinous crimes against the people of this country? One of them uncovered not too long ago by the whistleblower, Dr. Thompson, whereby for 14 years the American people were lied to, being responsible for, as a direct result of the research done by the CDC and hidden from the American people, massive cases of unnecessary autism, deaths, and how many other maladies spread across this nation because we're still getting a vaccination. Our children are. Okay? That the CDC proved to be extremely dangerous to our children 14 years ago and hid it. All of these things, everything I've mentioned, and I could keep on going. The man walked into the White House having made 36, I counted them one day, 36 promises when he was running for president to stem the tide of GMOs, guaranteeing us we would get the ability to have GMOs labeled on any foods we bought, and then signing the Monsanto Protection Act, which did exactly the opposite. Yes, he signed the bill with the Monsanto Protection Act in it. Isn't this the same president? Okay, I have just named you more things that are attacking the American people today, including the southern border, which doesn't get the attention it needs to get, because with an open southern border, terrorists, people with Ebola, criminals, you name it, can walk across that border. How much is already in this country? We're talking about the possibility of between 11 and 15 million illegals in this country. Not the 5 to 8 million the government is telling you. Twice that number. All right? So now what we have is all you excuse makers out there saying, well, Bush did this thing, and Clinton did this thing, and the other Bush did this thing. And yes, they did. Each and every one of them should have been taken to task. I need to explain to each and every one of you, this guy did not start any of this tyranny. He is not the first person to fall down on his mandated actions as the commander-in-chief under the Constitution to protect this country. He has just brought it to a whole new level. He has put it on a pedestal because he has perpetrated more infractions of that duty than all of the presidents in the last several generations combined. Would you like me to go over the list again? Would you like me to add another 20 or 30 infractions? And Chuck will tell you I'm very capable of doing that. All of these things not committed on the watches of these other idiots who sat in the White House. This has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with politics. This has nothing to do with party. This has to do with a man who has made an absolute mockery out of the title Commander-in-Chief. He has sold America down the frickin' river. Hey, but just listen up. There goes the ball.
And you know what the bottom line is? You're exactly right. He is not the innovator, but he is definitely raising the bar for the perpetrators.
On a very high level.
You know, not the first guy to lay down the groundwork, not even the guy who did the actual work, but definitely
has a Nobel Peace Prize. And he is responsible for so many deaths every single day that never had to be. So many hostilities worldwide. We do have to be there because Princeton stated we are now an oligarchy. Princeton stated we are now an oligarchy, no longer run via democratic process. And since he no longer in an oligarchy serves the people, he serves the oligarchs, and they want us there so that we can get the oil and the natural resources and the federal banks into those nations, then yes, we do have to be there. And as long as someone like this idiot sits in the White House and pretends to be the commander-in-chief, you and I have already seen the best days of America, and they're behind us. And let me explain something to you about 2020 hindsight. It's useless.
Mm-hmm. No, we can easily look back and say that there were better days there. We can easily look back and say this is how we got to where we are. But if we don't do something about where we're going, it is only going to get perfected, just like you said. I mean, the fact is, this guy's been the gold medal winner among the last string of puppets in chief. Even a guy like W, who I'm more than happy to take a shot at, definitely did not have the chops when it came to making this particular horrible symphony be conducted the way it is. This is exactly what's going on here. And again, I don't care what color he is. I don't care what party he is. He has absolutely failed on every single conceivable front to do what it is would be in the best, in the best interests of we the people.
Well, we're just right now talking about his role as commander-in-chief. And I would tell you, having spent my entire life either serving in, working for the military and the machine that protects this country, let's throw in there the fact that every general or admiral that has not agreed with him 100% and all of his failing policies around the world, which has turned America into a joke on the global stage. I deal with people from across this world every single day. We have contributors in 38 countries now. They think America is a joke. He has failed in the role of commander-in-chief magnitudes above any president since, I don't know, I would say since any president.
Well, there you go. I don't even have a comparable guy to go to. I mean, look, just again trying to stick in the in the particular area about being the commander-in-chief. I mean, let's think about this for a minute. The Nobel Peace Prize is one of the most laughable things I've ever seen bestowed on somebody in his position.
You read my last article where I talked about that. I said, does the committee for the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Committee, do they cringe every time you hear his name? Do they realize the absolute joke he has made their prize out to be? Do they cringe every time a report comes in of a new drone attack where 12 women, innocent women and children, were slaughtered for no reason whatsoever? What do you think the Nobel Committee thinks of this? Stop it. What do you think, Chuck? What do you think the Nobel Committee thinks of this?
Well, I wonder that myself because, there is way beyond, and we don't even have the time to get into this. In the second hour, we'll have Terry Joyce on, by the way.
Oh, very nice.
But, so we may actually have to lead into some comedy on this one. But look, what is not funny to me, although it is kind of, in an ironic sense, one of those things that needs to be pointed out again and again, is, look, you talked about the types of, engagements in a military sense that are advertised, that are well known. Okay.
Oh, no, I told you the other day that we have military presence in close to 170 out of 192 countries. And I told you that there were military actions going on either through military blackmail or military action across the globe. I only spoke the ones that everybody is aware of. Believe me, there are 3 to 4 times the amount of hostile incursions into sovereign nations going on around this country that you never know about.
Well, easily. Like, for instance, and here's a quick, easy to find, for instance, for anybody listening, ask the people in Pakistan how they're doing this right about now. Because, okay, they were, now let's go back to the mainstream narrative really quickly, the acceptable, normality, the new normal, as it were, of the situation. Pakistan was supposed to be helping us with the war on terror, right? They were supposed to be our allies all of a sudden for no apparent reason, although we had really aligned ourselves with India, and India and Pakistan are at each other's throats. Mortal enemies, absolutely, ever since
nuclear powers, yes.
Yeah, of course, which is a highly volatile situation. But, what doesn't get any sort of play anywhere is that there are still these drone attacks and things going on in Pakistan. So regardless of what you think of them as a nation or whether they were a viable helper when it came to the war on terror or anything else, there are still bodies getting piled up, basically going on the column of the U.S., fighting forces, as it were, whether it be via drones or special forces or anything else, among the Pakistani population.
Well, let's also throw in there South America and Central America, because there's a couple of South American countries right now where they have death squads riding through the streets in open vehicles, shooting people as they run out of their homes.
Right.
And these are dictatorial governments that are not only supported by this government, but the weapons they're using and the money to provide such military strength comes directly from your tax dollars.
Well, right, and this is nothing new. This is not a newly emerging breaking story.
Nope.
This has been something that's been going on a very, very long time. I mean, studying national security and stuff regarding foreign policy, back in the 60s we had this kind of stuff happening all over the globe. But in Central and South America, here's what cracks me up, is, all of this hand-wringing lately about how we're bringing Cuba back into the fold. I wasn't particularly moved by this because the Cubans, they're trying to spread revolution and causing bloodshed in Central and South America. I mean, it's almost as if to say, hey, wait a minute, whoa, Fidel, that's our job. This is what it's...
the ultimate hypocrisy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's that, hey, look, don't take credit for our stuff there, Fidel. We're the ones who really caused the good bloodshed to happen anywhere you can grow good illicit drugs. But, let's put that aside.
If the money that is spent via all of the military actions conducted by the U.S. military, the CIA, or any other intelligence service in this country, which comes to at least 53 cents out of every dollar the government spends. If you took all of that money and you simply provided a good, strong defensive force to protect the United States of America, you would have enough money to balance the budget. You would have enough money to make a actual social, and I'm not for it, but you could actually make a good social medical program that would apply to all citizens in this country. You could offer free medical. You could eliminate the budget deficit, not the debt, but the budget deficit. We wouldn't be adding anything more to it. You could, but as America falls to its knees economically and medically, we are, and if anybody tells you they're cutting the military budget, they're a bunch of frickin' liars. What comes out of the front door goes into the black budget on the back door. We are spending so much money. If we stopped spending that money, this country would be the strong, industrious, free country it is intended to be. It is the military-industrial complex and the corporatocracy running this country, as Princeton has proven, that is killing us all slowly.
Well, right, and I've actually seen, and whether you agree with the idea or not, I've actually seen somebody lay it out numerically, that it would take less than a decade less than a decade now, Roger, if we were to apply the money which is being spent on these military programs, on these incursions,
to pay off the entire debt.
We could take care of, let's not even attempt to pay off the entire debt. But just imagine this for a moment. This is what I saw, and I'm not sure if it's mathematically possible to deal with that debt. But here's what I did see. Here's what I did see is mathematically possible. You could literally provide that free health care you're talking about, and I do mean completely free, pay for everything, for every citizen, without even blinking, and, ready for this, anybody who is on that poverty line who is hungry, you could also feed them without running out of money, Roger. For 10 years, even with a population growth that was nearly double the rate we're at now.
I'm going to take that even one step further. I'm going to tell you right now that there are enough empty homes in this country, empty homes that have been repossessed, foreclosed on, whatever you want to call them, empty homes, that every single homeless individual in this country, the government could buy those homes up at a severely discounted rate, which of course they would get because the banks ain't getting anything for them right now. And every single homeless individual in this country could have a warm, comfortable place to live.
No, absolutely, and we're not even talking about cramming them into places. We're talking about numerically. In most regions of this country, you would not have to make it any more than a two-family house situation.
Oh, yeah. There's something like 10 million plus repossessed homes on the market today that'll never sell.
Right. And some of them, again, for a song, because basically somebody couldn't pay their taxes. There are literally homes out there that before the giant crash happened, were $500,000 homes, were $300,000 homes, whatever else, that could be purchased for a fraction of that.
Anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000, and if you pay the taxes on some of them, you can get away with as little as $10,000 to $15,000.
Right. This is exactly the math we're talking about, and that would be a viable investment. And I know, people are saying, well, gee, what do you want, a giant nanny state? No, but I'll tell you what.
No, because what I would do is I would give them a place to live, and then how much infrastructure in this country has to be rebuilt? I would say, here's a home for you to live. That's worth $500 a month to you at a reasonable rate of $15 an hour. We'll provide the food you need. We'll pay your utilities. You will go out and help rebuild this road. You'll go out and help rebuild this bridge. You'll go out. That's not a nanny state. That's called earning your keep.
Well, exactly. In other words, you could actually rehabilitate the economic woes in this country, the infrastructure problems in this country, all in one shot while actually giving people their dignity back and not being crushed up by the system. Now, there are some people who say, well, you want the government to do stuff for you. But listen, I would, even if you think that that's way too fair of a way to deal with people, even if you think that that's a socialist gesture or anything else, here's what the bottom line is. I would prefer that the money and resources in this country were dedicated to life as opposed to death.
We're dedicated to the American people instead of in opposition to the American people. Because every dollar spent on war today is in direct opposition to the livelihood of people within this country.
Right, and all it is doing at the end of the day, in its very essence, is feeding the possibility. And I'm of the opinion that the entire ISIS construct is a fairy tale. Okay, I think that there are legitimate people out there, though, that are definitely building resentment, that are definitely building us up as a serious threat to themselves, to their societies, to their families, and their futures.
Why would they do that? We killed their daughter, we killed their son with a wayward missile, with a drone attack that, we got the bad guy, but we killed 15 other people that had nothing to do with anything. I'm going to tell you something. You walk into my house, you kill my child, I'm going to spend the rest of my life, and I dare anybody listening to this show to tell me you wouldn't do the same thing. The government walks into your house and kills your child for no reason at all, or your wife, or your mother, or your father. What are you going to do? We have manufactured 99.9% of every terrorist on this planet that wants to see Americans dead.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is a hostility of our own making. So, an hour again, I got to stop and qualify it. It's not you and me making these decisions, but it is those that we have allowed to gain the reins of power, that we have allowed to seize the greater controls of. It is those that we've allowed to do that. So, in reality, I know you do, and I'm just grabbing. Grabbing Terry, but go ahead.
And while you do that, what this all comes around to, okay, is we have an individual filling the role of Commander-in-Chief, which by our Constitution is his most, okay, featured responsibility within his administration is the role of Commander-in-Chief and keeping the United States safe. Nobody has failed at this job in such a large fashion as this gentleman has, by magnitudes. And that was the reason for my rant today. Hello, Terry.
Hi. How you guys doing?
I'm about to go away, but Chuck usually lets me stick around to say hello to his next guest.
It's good to talk to you again.
It is. It's always good to talk to you. And I'm going to let you and Chuck have your dues because I'm already 6 minutes into your hour. But Chuck, I thank you so much for putting up with me. I'm not an easy person to talk with. I do prefer to rant over calm conversation. I want people to know how much this angers me.
Oh, I know, and I do apologize because I always have that need to kind of jump in and restoke your fire a little bit.
No, you do.
because no matter how hot it's burning, sir, I think it needs to be. It can always use a little more coal. You know what I mean?
A little bit more oxygen.
Another shovel full of coal and another push from the old. What did they used to call those things?
Pillows.
That would. What was that?
Pillows.
There we go. That would push the oxygen level up so that you get a hotter burn. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and so I do that sometimes, and you got to remember, it's not always my viewpoints that I'm throwing at you. It's just the nonsense that I know is coming out of the mouths of individuals that we all know are not quite as awake and aware as the rest of us that have these conversations. So I just want to make sure that those kind of go on the record. You know what I mean?
I come back every week for a very good reason. I enjoy my discussions with you, my friend. And now I'm going to let you enjoy a discussion with another very good friend of mine, Ms. Terry Joyce. And I'll tell you, everybody who's listening, the next hour is going to be much easier to listen to than the first one was.
Oh,
Well, thanks again, Roger. And like I said before, I dropped that link into chat, but you can always find Roger's work at The Liberty Beacon, which is all one word, .com. And there's just an endless supply of interesting reads over there, lots of information, lots of opinion, and every once in a while you can find yourself in the midst of one of Roger's rants, and even in a written form, there's something to behold. So do appreciate your time, and we'll do this again
next Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Terry.
hello.
How have you been, Terry?
Not too bad. Just kind of plugging away on everything. Since we spoke last, I got an extra night on Revolution Radio at 8 p.m. on Saturdays, as well as my Friday show. So I've got like two of those things going on now, and I've been doing some comedy work. Got back on the comedy horse. So yeah, just plugging away as usual.
Well, that's good news. Of course, if you're on at 8 o'clock Eastern on Revolution Radio, then that means that you're competing directly with me on Saturday, but that's okay. That's okay. You can always catch my archive. Or there. You know what? I never did ask you. Is there a way to find your archives over there at Revolution Radio?
Well, there is. I mean, people can go ahead and listen to everybody's archives for $4.99 a month on the website. They can also. I do YouTube videos too off of my shows, and most of my shows are also replaying on Awake Radio, the Time for Hemp Network, and the Liberty Beacon Project. So. It does definitely get a replay, and I make a YouTube video out of it. So, and my YouTube channel is Terry Joyce, and it's a Freedom of Joyce. Make sure it says Freedom of Joyce, because there's a couple Terry Joyce YouTube channels out there. So.
Yeah, and of course, this show always goes up on YouTube under the UCY.TV channel. So, a little while after we're done here tonight, UCY will drop a YouTube video of this as well. And, of course, the MP3s are available at ucy.tv/TOE. And a few weeks later, usually I get around to putting them up on the SoundCloud, but that's about it for now. And I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with the SoundCloud into next year, because it does cost money, and I haven't been picking up a lot of followers over there. But you can download all the shows I've done on UCY pretty much up to this point for free over there for now. But we might have to come up with a mechanism so that makes some financial sense if that's going to continue. But hey, anyway, so you've been getting back into doing the comedy stuff, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I hadn't really. Really had left. It's when I moved back down to the Los Angeles area. I hadn't done a gig. I did a gig on the way home, which was on August 8th and 9th. But since pretty much being in this area, I got readjusted and of course working on the radio and everything like that. So it'd been a few months. I mean, August, September, October, November. It was about 4 months before I'd been on stage. So that's a while. Usually you don't go that long. So I just did a stint at the Wind River Casino in Redding, California. And today I've been working on getting more bookings started for my next year going here. So, calling old bookers and stuff like that in the area and setting some stuff up. I'm working on a one-woman show now called Freedom of Joyce to go along with the radio show. I mean, that was kind of always the brain, the thought, that there would be a radio show with the idea and then some sort of one-woman show special, something like that.
Right, and you've been talking with me about that since earlier this year. I guess it was somewhere in June there when we first talked about that. And you were talking about developing the one-woman show, which will obviously have some comedy in it. It won't be an entire stand-up routine, though, right? It'll actually have some other stuff going on too, right?
Well, you know what? I'm not sure. I mean, It may be, all stand-up. It's still going to be comedy-oriented. It might have some other kinds of moments or beats to it that aren't necessarily just set up punchline. It might have a different rhythm to it. I'm not really sure now. I mean, I do other things. I mean, I might make a dramatic comment or something, which might qualify it into being something a little bit different. I mean, I can also sing a little bit. I'm not really sure what exactly the whole thing really totally looks like, but it will definitely be, a Freedom of Joy show. I am wanting to be able to take it and put it into theaters. Rather than just comedy clubs, and maybe enter. I would like to enter it into like the Edinburgh Festival and some of the festivals, the fringe festivals, where they it's a little bit more alternative. You've got a little bit more play, but they're really into it. And usually, it's those kind of shows though that sometimes get picked up for specials.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things that sort of broke the whole Whoopi Goldberg thing some years ago when she did her one-woman show where she did, I think it was 4 different characters, and that was pretty unique. I don't know how aware you are of Whoopi's stuff, but that was back when she wasn't just on The View and all that. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah. I know pretty much a lot of Whoopi's career background. Definitely. I mean, yeah, of course. I know she started out with doing some sort of show, and then she branched, and then stand up, and then also the movies and everything else that's been going on for her. She's quite an incredible lady, really. I'm not a fan of The View, though, Charles.
No, I know that. That's why I kind of brought it up there to bookend it a little bit.
She's the best thing on it, but I'm not a fan of The View.
Well, right. And, a lot of people don't realize that I'm actually kind of a connoisseur of comedy to some degree, because I actually study the way these things are developed and find it extremely fascinating. And, in fact, I even broached an idea earlier with you about doing sort of a social commentary show on one of my shows coming up soon. I've actually invited a bunch of people so far, but I'm really looking forward to who you might be able to bring on with you as well, and also your contribution to it, because I think that'll be definitely something of interest. Of course, we all reference the Bill Hickses of the world, and people in alternative media do love to reference people like George Carlin and those people that have passed. And now Lee Camp has agreed to come on with me, but I can't seem to nail him down to a date. I've been having fun with that lately. But this other thing that I'm talking about doing with you will be a little different. I'm trying to bring together a very odd grouping of individuals for it, to see if we can really get a nice, interesting conversation going with, say, like 3 or 4 comedians all at once.
That would be you know what? I mean, the right comedians tapped into who can discuss on different topics. I mean, I do have quite a few. I've got some friends that I did radio shows with too as well, and we were kind of in a grouping, kind of doing a lot of different things together, and they are in the vein of this of what we're talking about here. I mean, here's the thing. Not all comedians are going to. I mean, for example, I heard you guys talking about ISIS, and I have close friends that have connections that go on shows saying that ISIS was created by us, by the CIA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they may not be in that space, not having that kind of awareness. So, different comics have different, levels of, some comics don't talk about any politics whatsoever. They're completely, off in left field. But by and large, a lot of us, have that rebel gene, and we are going to question a lot more stuff, or be more interested than talking about what the stereotypical things that you can talk about that the mainstream media wants you to do to represent them. I mean,
right, and believe me, I was going for a wide spectrum here. I mean, I could throw a couple of names of people that I've tried to contact regarding this, and you'll say, what in the world is he thinking of? But the thing is, I mean, I'm actually looking for a really eclectic grouping of individuals that are not necessarily in my space, but are still making contributions to the social stratosphere, as it were. You know what I mean? Via their art form. I mean, like, for instance, I reached out to Paul Mooney even to see if I could possibly get him to appear briefly, and that Paul is definitely a comic who has edge upon edge and is a legend.
I love Paul Mooney. I mean, if you could get Paul Mooney on that, I would be like, oh my God, Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney is amazing.
Well, right, and a lot of people don't recognize exactly how amazing he is. This is a guy who wrote for Richard Pryor. A lot of people might recognize him from the Chappelle shows. One of the most brilliant things I've ever seen on a television show was the segment with Dave Chappelle where it was Ask a Black Guy. That was probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen on television at all. Of course, you've been on television, too. You did the Last Comic Standing thing, which we mentioned the first time you were on the show. But I don't know if we mentioned it in any recent appearances with me, but that was one of the things that you did. Of course, go ahead.
I was on the show the first season, and the show that branded it mainly. I was on with Ralphie May, whom I just listened to on K-Rock when I was driving my car yesterday. K-Rock is a radio station out here in Los Angeles. It's an alternative radio network that's gone really yucky and corporate. I don't know. I think, what do you call it? A Clear Channel just came and barfed all over it and decided to control it.
Much like what happened to K-Rock, which is spelled differently in New York. Same kind of thing happened. It was at one time kind of an edgy powerhouse of sorts, and once the larger interest came in and swept up all those terrestrial radio stations, it kind of went into the corporate garbage bin, as it were.
It's not cool, really. It's not underground like it originally was, and you know how that happens. I don't know. It just gets watered down, unfortunately. But Ralphie May was on it, and I have to give Ralphie May a shout out and saying, "Way to go!" He still admits that he smokes marijuana on the air on K-Rock, and I'm like, "All right, cool, dude." You know what I mean? It's like I whatever a person, if a comedian, because here's the thing. Okay, yes, we're moving over more as a country in terms of legalization and awareness and stuff like that. And then again, it's frustrating because everybody plays the dumb stoner. The Hollywood depicts the dumb stoner aspect and doesn't because it's for a reason, in my opinion. But whenever you have an entertainer that, comes out of the closet, because, there are some entertainers who don't come out of the closet because they can't get the Disney movie, because you know what Disney's all about, right? So, Disney had, for a long, long time, Disney's had a shutdown over people's personal lives that way.
Right.
I have to, yay for Ralphie,
No, absolutely. And what I love about comedians is that they are generally speaking the vanguard when it comes to social progression. If you think about it very clearly, we could go back into the typical history points, the Lenny Bruces of the world and stuff like that. But all along, this is what's gone on. The first time that, that you got to hear about a lot of, say, alternative lifestyles and things might have been via these comedians in a lot of cases, making jokes about it, actually revealing a great deal about their own personal lives in many cases. They have caused discussions to ensue, and of course it's a lot more palatable to the sort of morally entrenched in this country to first receive the ice-breaking event from a comedic source, and this is why I am so fascinated by stand-up comedians particularly, but comedy as a genre is actually one of those great sort of vanguard industries that hasn't been entirely co-opted by the corporatist interests at this point. There is still a place for somebody to go out there and be raw and be ahead of their time, and to do things in a way that's not conventional, that's not going to be in line with the Disneys of the world, and still they can make a successful career out of it. So that's what's amazing to me in that entertainment field,
Well, and this is true, and this is why I feel that I want to do the Freedom of Joy show, or this is why I feel that I'm going back and loving it. I'm not saying I'm going back. I guess in some ways I kind of am, because when I was on when I was on Last Comic Standing, I had I had a very counterculture appearance. I had spikes in my hair. I wore Hot Topic clothes. I was definitely kind of avant-garde in a sense, and pierced tongue. I had I was black fingernail polish, whatever, and it was very character-like. In a sense, I guess at the time I was behaving and saying a few things that were considered different or unusual or whatever, but it wasn't until later on in my life that I had a few things happen to me that I actually became awakened to things and started to become even more, having more of something to say. And I feel that now, at this point in my life, I have something to say, and if I could say that and orchestrate that in an intelligent and funny way, and I love I love stand up. I don't think it's my favorite thing to do. I love radio too, but there's nothing like doing stand up.
Well, that interplay with the live audience is something that's unique, especially among that type of performance, because, as a musician like I was, you had a kind of a buffer that was there, but really you can emotionally interact with the room a lot more when it's just you and a microphone. And of course, somebody's been listening to my show a while, because the question pops up in the chat room: is she going to do any more porn? Well, now that, of course, is a reference to the discussion we had some months ago.
Well, they remembered me.
And they remember you.
See, it's always pot or porn. It's one of the two. Someone's going to remember one of those things. No, I don't see myself working in the adult film industry anymore.
But you haven't ruled it out entirely, have you?
I don't rule anything out entirely.
Okay.
I think the reason for that is because sometimes some project comes up and there's an exception to the rule. Right. And even working in that was kind of an exception to the rule, really, for me. So, I never thought that I'd actually legitimately have that as part of my human experience. But that could very much be part of the show, though, that I do, is to tell that story.
Right. I definitely would include it, that's for sure, because I found it extremely fascinating. And you could go all sorts of different ways with it, obviously, and probably wrap it into something where you, pardon the pun here, but you sort of tell a moral with the porn story. It could be.
Well, there is a moral to it, but maybe people could, most people, they can't get past the fact that they just, their mind goes someplace else, and sometimes I might have said it. It's actually in the film. It's all about the message of the first movie was liberation. Right. Of course, it's sexual liberation, but that was the underlying theme for it. Now, whether or not people actually do that, they just don't skip through the porno to get to the sex scenes and don't care about the plot line, which is usually what happens. I don't know if anybody's going to watch that part of it, but there is a possibility, and I hope this maybe happens. I'm going to put that out there. They shoot a softcore and a hardcore version of it, and the softcore version has been talked about, maybe being on a Cinemax show, or Showtime late night or something like that. So it very well could transition into something a little bit, and in that case, maybe the plot line would be more recognized and paid attention to. I don't know.
That's a possibility, right? Well, hey, look, the possibilities are endless when you're literally, part of the canvas that you're presenting, and that's what it is for me from an artistic standpoint, is that, you interject yourself as a performer into your canvas as opposed to simply presenting the painting. You know what I mean? And of course, as I said, I have a great deal of respect for the comedy genre, especially because it is so loaded and can become extremely volatile to the socially accepted norms of the time. That it can cause greater and much more evolved discussions to ensue, So this is what's so great about it, and of course I'm all on board for a little shock value every once in a while too. As I told you, one of my favorite comedians was Sam Kinison, and if you think about it, at the time he was doing what he was doing. That was not something that was generally done. You know what I mean? It was definitely a new wave of stuff that was coming out around that time.
Plus, just to have a man scream.
Oh yeah, but you believed it. It wasn't even like you thought that this guy is doing an act. No.
It was so different and over the top that. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. Ralphie May happened to mention that he was one of those people. Sam Kinison, was one of those people that he got a chance to meet him at a comedy club or do some time in front of him, and he really liked him, and so he took him to open on another gig and the whole experience, about how he got pizza because he's a fat boy and wanted to have pizza, and then Sam Kinison tipped him with cocaine.
Yeah.
They tried to the pizza company. I don't know what pizza company it was, but they tried to call back and go, "Don't you want some more pizza? We'd love to deliver some more pizza to you."
Yeah, well, I'm sure they were really thrilled with that ringing endorsement, right?
The 80s too, so and all of that, he told that story and stuff, and I did get to meet Sam Kinison once at the Comedy Store. I was introduced and shook his hand, and then I was invited to a party. It was one of his birthday parties, and it was in a studio in the Burbank area, and so I went. And, Billy Idol was there and everything.
That was the weird thing with him. I got to shake his hand one time after in between performances, because I had gone and seen him at the Ritz in New York City when I was younger, and then he had gone over to Jersey to do a gig at Rascals, I think it was. Which was, some warm-up for some change in his act that was coming up or whatever. And he did a lot of different things, too. I mean, but also got kind of blackballed for his sort of outrageous and reckless lifestyle and all that. And unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of people remember is that kind of stuff about Sam. And they don't always, look at him as the innovator that he was. And of course, nowadays, being in a sort of different frame of mind than I was back then, I mean, I don't know if at this time, if a guy like that emerged, that he would necessarily work as he did back then. You know what I mean? A lot of these people are very much a symptom of their time. And, a screaming guy in the 80s makes a lot of sense. A screaming guy in the early 90s makes a lot of sense. But, now with people being as high-strung as they are, I don't know if they could handle the trauma of a Sam Kinison show anymore,
I don't know. I do know, I mean, again, in terms of the partying, I mean, he was very, very rock and roll. I mean, and so in terms of the partying and things like that, some comics, whether they're famous or not, like to the level of Sam Kinison, the lifestyle almost kind of beckons, some sort of decadence in some ways. So, but I'm not saying like everyone's like that, but especially it seems like during that time, even as a society, we were very, it seemed like we were very self-indulgent that way. Party and, there was this, I don't know, it was a different kind of energy. Like, for example, I wasn't part of the 80s on the road. I didn't work the circuit in the 80s. I'm a 90s, I started in the 90s to work professionally. And so I missed the, times where, my friends talk about this, where they would be at a comedy club and they'd go, "Do you want us to pay you in Coke or money?" and they say that some comics took the Coke.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, it didn't matter the level of fame you were at. It was just kind of part of the lifestyle as being a performer who was, a bit of a vagabond on the earth, as it were, traveling about. I mean, I wasn't very famous, but, there were places where I went where, alcohol being handed to me and pretty women that were hangers around in a club would be purposely placed, in my proximity, let's just say. Nowadays I don't think that culture sort of exists like it did back then. And of course, drugs were handed out.
It does. I mean, like, for example, okay, the Coke is out. I mean, right. It's like really, again, there's weed, but weed does something different to you. So it's not, I wouldn't even put that in necessarily, there's a lot of comedians that like to smoke weed, but that's probably helping them with their sanity. Now, alcohol though is it can be a problem because it is there and it is very prevalent, and people want to buy it for you. They want to party with you afterwards. They want to hang out. They want to take you places. And usually, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female, because I go out. I mean, there's a smorgasbord of opportunity to play with, and it could be male or female in my case. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to be like. I mean, it's just what happens. Now you as a person don't have to choose to participate, because even if you do or whatever, everything gets old after a while, and eventually it catches up with you, and the lifestyle's self-destructive. So at some point, even if you did do it or whatever that happened, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've had my moments. I've had my parties, but now I'm in a different place. Now, it doesn't mean that I might not go out and meet people, and maybe I will have a few cocktails after a show and go to my hotel room, or I might not. I might stay and dance for a while, or I might be have some fun. But I never really lost too much control in the first place. But there's some guys, man, or some people that they're too addictive in their personality, and they're not alive anymore. It kills them.
Whatever you dump in front of them, they would overindulge in. Right. And for me personally, I mean, like, I was never all jazzed up about the sex aspect of it, which also was part of the game back then. Right. I usually had a girlfriend at home and was, faithful, as crazy as that sounds. No matter whether I was, in a foreign country or in a place where I knew I'd never be back to or whatever else, didn't really matter to me. That wasn't what I participated in. Now, I can't say the same thing about the free flow of drugs that was around, whole other situation. And to me, I mean, even back then, smoking pot was like... it was like water, it wasn't, it was just part of life. It wasn't, anything big.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, and again, I don't want to make it sound like it's just a drug-free for all for comics, because it really isn't. I mean, those days are gone. Sam Kinnison's days are gone. Mainly, the most issues would be, infidelity, or, and again, I mean, I didn't, cheat on the road either, but, when I was single...
different story then, but I'm just saying that it's changed as a culture, and it's really, and it's not just exclusive to comedians either. If you're a traveling performer of sorts, this is the kind of thing that just happens to be part of the life. And although it's not as prevalent as it once was, it's still out there.
If you stand on stage and you have a microphone, it doesn't even matter if you're in the truth media at these, at the Super Soldier Summit. If you're sitting there holding the microphone, I'm pretty sure there's some groupie that's going to want to go back to your hotel rooms with you, maybe. I mean,
you're right. Any type of...
Somebody's going to give you the wink, even if you don't act on it or not. It's just, it kind of puts you in a different category for some reason. I mean, it's like... I have guy friends, comedians, that they became a comedian so they could get laid. That was their motivation. I go, why'd you try stand-up? Because I wanted to get laid. Mm-hmm. Because that's what happens. They get on stage, they're funny guy. Women like funny men. They think that's sexy. You don't even have to be all that great looking, really, or you could be broke, but if you're funny and the crowd laughed at you, it's a bargaining chip. They were the star. People, small town, the girl who takes home it's all that kind of,
Exactly, and I can't tell you how many musicians there are out there that picked up that guitar and sat there and practiced for years in their basements with exactly the same idea in their mind. Is that, at the very least, if I'm at least halfway decent and I can get out there and do this, I'll get some. So this is their motivation for learning their pentatonic scales and such. I mean, it is the way it is.
It's the power of power of the V. I don't know. It's women. I mean, it's like, I mean, come on, let's face it. Like, wars are fought for women.
Right, and it's the power of the spotlight, really.
Huh?
It's the power of the spotlight. If you're, in some way a standout of one type or another, this is the kind of thing that causes your level of attractiveness to seemingly rise, because there are always going to be people out there that are going to want to, taste some of that, although they don't necessarily have the courage or the skill to go do it themselves. So they kind of live vicariously through you, and you live vicariously through them. This is how this is done, and that spotlight could be on you for many different reasons. Even a guy who reads your local news, has groupies, and all he's doing is reading off a teleprompter or a piece of paper.
I'm not doing the Freedom of Joy show, by the way, so I can get laid. So.
Oh yeah, well, that was the next logical question. Are you doing this so you can get more action?
Right. I thought, wow, it's getting boring now. I better put a show together.
I'm feeling lonely. Time to do some radio.
Right,
No.
Cocktails. No, that's not it.
Absolutely. Have you been working on the blog lately, by the way?
You know what? I haven't been on my blog like I need to be on my blog. As a matter of fact, I was just telling Roger that I'm going to get back on, and because I've got a lot I want to start doing with it. So I mainly, I got a little over, sometimes like a bunch of projects hit you at one time, and your life is going really fast, and you know what, I still have to, I've got one advertiser right now that I'm working with for Freedom of Joyce. That is one thing that has happened, and I'm excited about that. But I live with my dad's, things aren't easy. Either I've got to go out and do a comedy gig to pay the rent, or I've got to take, some sort of, part-time job in between if I don't want to go on the road. And so, yeah, so I've been hustling 24 hours, and then producing shows. You know how it is.
Well, right. I'm trying to hustle together some things too to see if I can, monetize some of my efforts, and I'm discovering that some of them, are easily monetized and some of them are not. And it's part of the reality of this stuff. And I don't worry, everybody. I won't be trying to go out and perform as a musician anytime soon. But I won't inflict the digital age with my creative madness. But I
want to mention, if anybody does out there want to, support the Freedom of Joy show or and everything, or me at this time, you can go to my blog, which is freedomofjoyce.net, and I do take donations. So I have to do a plug for myself. Anybody out there, any angel giver, thanks.
Oh, absolutely. We're all willing to take donations.
Right. That is one thing that it is on my blog. It takes you right to my PayPal. So. Right.
So anyway, and you're continuing to do now. What are the other nights? You got the one where you're on the same time as me on Saturday on Revolution Radio. But what are the other times that you're on?
I'm on Fridays from 2 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern. On a Revolution Radio Live, and then I'm replaying on Awake Radio. It's Wednesdays, and I believe it's 10 p.m. and then it's God, I have to look at the schedule again. It's like 10 p.m., 10 a.m. UK. It's like 12-hour split on it, and then there's also the Liberty Beacon Project on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. replay. And I'm also on These Changing Times Radio at 7 p.m. That's Central.
What day is These Changing Times?
On Mondays.
On Mondays, okay. Yeah, and also you had the...
I'm sorry, I forgot Time for Hemp and iHeartRadio. That's 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. on that network. And there's archives on there, so you can always access archives on the Time for Hemp, my Time for Hemp archive page, and they're free. So they're basically the same as Revolution Radio, really.
Well, that was the next one I was going to bring up, the Time for Hemp shows that you do as well. Have you gotten back into doing those more regularly? Because for a little while you were taking a little break with those.
Well, actually, what I'm doing now is I'm just replaying Freedom of Joyce on Time for Hemp. I made Freedom of Joyce Time for Hemp, so I'm not right now. Even the network itself isn't really broadcasting too much live stuff. They're having everybody turn in all their material done, edited, and ready to go, and they're just programming the network. But my show does air from 12 a.m. to 2 p.m. on that. So really, the only 2 live shows that I have where I'm producing every week is the Revolution Radio, and then everything else is just being replayed from the Revolution Radio material, basically.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what's carried over at tlbtowncrier.com. Is the Revolution Radio rebroadcast of Freedom of Joyce.
Yeah, I would be, once, there's, like I said before, once there's a slot, I might broadcast live out of that portal, Liberty Beacon, eventually, but not yet, because that's still building and everything too as well.
Well, right. I mean, that's on its way. There is going to be a reorganization of that at the top of the year, and there will be a lot more live broadcasts over there, as well as some other scheduled sort of replays and things like that. So probably there'll be a way that both of those things will go on over there for you. If you're up for it. So we shall soon see. But
I was wondering about the you mentioned. Did you guys talk about the Sony issue with the movie that's coming out?
Well, with the last 15 minutes, that's exactly what I wanted to cover with you. Because, here's the thing, and this has been my opinion so far, and I know it's going to sound a little kooky, but bear with me, okay? First of all, Seth Rogen, not that funny to me. I'm sorry. I think that what Sony had on their hands was a bomb of a film. It didn't seem like it was appealing very much. I bet you that they tested it and it didn't test well, and I think that they probably just got the notice. And I think that generally speaking, when these kind of things happen, they're usually inside jobs. First of all, I think it's ridiculous to blame the North Koreans for it. Because, technologically speaking, they are crawling way behind what it would take to actually accomplish this. And I don't really care what the mainstream says about this Bureau 121 being dedicated cyber attack agents and doing, relative harm to the American public at large and everything else. And meanwhile, the best thing they can do is attack a Seth Rogen film. Come on. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, Terry. We haven't discussed this at all, but I was wondering what your perspective was on it.
Well, for one thing, what concerns me about it is, that I guess it's a cyber hacking or cyber. I mean, it's a cyber thing going on where somebody it came through social media. That this was going on, and then it escalated, and somehow there's a social media connection to it, and which is kind of we're wanting to keep the internet free. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to use this as part of the tightening of our ability here. I mean, to have free internet is I've heard that aspect going on. Because God forbid you should stop the sales of a big studio called Sony.
Well, and on a serious note, I mean, I guess it does kind of feed into the desires of the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, to sort of be able to exercise greater retaliatory strikes against people that are seizing intellectual properties, and this is what it kind of feeds into, is the idea that the SOPA type action to try and stop online piracy could become part of the justification for allowing a greater amount of policing on the internet. I mean, that's where I'm seeing it come up as a serious issue. But putting this in its proper perspective, I mean, what are we really talking about here?
Well, one of the things I think we're talking about too, which I find interesting, is now it seems like the media and a lot of people saying now it's a freedom of speech issue, freedom of expression. Well, we should be able to have this movie go on because it's a movie, it's a film, and despite the rumors of the threat of a terrorist act we should be able to do this. It may also be devised to actually create tension between us and North Korea in some ways. I think, as well as the possibility. I also think it shows. It's evident that our films are telling truths, or they're predicting things. You know, there's always, again, I'm getting into the conspiracy theory era, but they do show things in movies to us, and part of them showing us is our it's almost like our consent and allowing the objective of whoever may be wanting to create certain things happening in the world. Well, have you heard that? I mean, like that's part of it. And so the fact that such upset happened based on this, and and if North Korea is really upset about it and blah 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 blah, blah and all that happening, then it means that the leaders take what happens in a film to be very serious business.
See, and I'll take a more recent example of what goes on when I don't think that this film is a serious threat, and I don't think it's really speaking any truth. A film that did come out recently which speaks to a lot of truth is something called Kill the Messenger. Have you heard of that film?
Yes, I have, and I wanted to see it really bad.
Well, right, but here you have something that was in a very limited release, didn't get a whole lot of the advertising backing that is usually required to launch a film in a very wide spectrum sort of way in the mainstream, right? And for those who don't know what we're talking about, I mean, this is the Gary Webb story. This links back to, the CIA dealing cocaine and being involved with the crack epidemic in this country, as it were, all of that kind of stuff. And it draws back to some very real issues. And it seems to me as though they quashed it via discouraging financial backers to get themselves involved in it, whereas this Rogan film, by contrast, is something that had plenty of backing and everything else and is getting tons of attention, was going to get tons of attention, but may actually not have been an economically viable situation. I still point back to that and think to myself that it's, it wasn't speaking a truth, it's just satire, and perhaps it wasn't even very good satire. I mean, maybe I'm prejudging it a little bit, and I shouldn't. But Rogan to me is kind of a one-trick pony. You know what I mean?
It's not like I'm saying it's not. I don't think it's like they're telling the truth. I'm just saying. You know how like sometimes in movies there'll be a word like Sandy Hook, for example, in Batman or something like that, or there's just symbolism of things that it's almost like, or they'll show there was a Nicolas Cage movie where they showed an oil spill in the Gulf on it with a fire, and then another disaster happened just like it later. Like they pre-show sometimes disasters that are going to happen in the future, or they and again, we're getting into, a lot of people don't think this is really real, but I do feel that we're being shown things in movies, whether they be a comedy or a cartoon or whatever it is, and the fact that Korea or all this happened just so much over a movie implicating something kind of says to me that that's true. In a sense that it's not really it's the idea of assassinating him that I think people and the fact that the film makes it even it's an energy thing. It's like it's being put out there in people's minds. I think that something too that maybe it's the suggestion of something that is what's upsetting people, as opposed to for example, you're talking about the Gary Webb movie. That's an independent film. That's a film that's trying to get out and get into the mainstream, to get a message to the mainstream people. The mainstream media don't want to throw money at that, even if people would be interested in it, because they don't want that information to get out. They don't want the mainstream people to realize that the CIA has been involved in our drug culture for and they were involved in transporting the drugs. They don't want us to, and that the CIA actually helped the hip hop music industry to also in conjunction with the prison system to make money, a profit off of that, and to glamorize what is happening, what they were doing as a cover up. There's a hip hop artist named Freeway Ricky Ross who is not the real Freeway Ricky Ross. There's these kind of things happening. They don't want this kind of, truth to come out to people because they've been involved in the deception of it. Whereas this movie is actually going, oh yeah, it's a joke, it's a satire, it's a comedy, it's a film, we have the right to freedom of expression, but they're actually implicating an idea to people. And if the idea is laughed at and accepted, then it kind of like gives the elite the ability to actually, since we said it was okay, then we're going to allow it to happen to us, or something symbolic like it. May not be this particular, guy. That's all I'm saying. That's some people believe that there's a theory of that going on that I think might be the underlying reason. It's kind of conspiracy theory, though. Some people would say.
Yeah, and I understand that we're speculating about this, obviously, and but it stinks to me as something that that was done, for other purposes outside of what it is they're naming it for. I don't think that North Korea is a legitimate threat. I mean, it's not the first time that their grand leader over there has been made fun of and all that kind of stuff. Weird question from the chat room. I'll just read it to you, and I'll apologize for it in advance. Does she agree with Alex Jones that Arabs own Hollywood, or run Hollywood? Excuse me.
I don't. I mean, I'm not saying Arab. I think Arabs. This is who I feel runs Hollywood: the Masons and the Zionists, and yes. I mean, I don't know if that's not necessarily Arab though. It's the Freemasons and it's the Zionists.
Okay.
Hollywood.
I just figured I would ask that because it was at least somewhat relevant to what we were talking about.
I thought it was going to be a scarier question. Actually, there's a lot of Freemason symbology in a lot of movies. Once you start to recognize it, and if you go down on Hollywood Boulevard, it's just. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Kimmel does his tapings out of a Masonic lodge. Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, Terry, we're going to run out of time, but I really want to thank you for coming on, and it is always a fascinating discussion. And, of course, we went everywhere from Seth Rogen and the Disney Company to pornography and Sam Kinison. And you know what? That's just the way I like to cover an hour on here. That's enjoyable and always fun to have you on. And, one of these days, and I'll tell you, when somebody brought up the idea of doing like sort of an awake cartoon series, I put you down on the list of people that I would suggest to contact to do one of the voices, because I think you'd make a really good cartoon voice as well. So anybody out there listening, think about that. I think Terry would make a great cartoon voice.
I've done some of that work before, actually. Yeah.
Oh, you have? I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this would be like, like, say, cartoon shorts on how 9/11 was an inside job, or everybody should be allowed to have weed and all that kind of thing. I definitely we can envision you being one of those voices. So, so just so you know, and hey, it's just a random thought of mine that I figured I'd bring up too. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening here on UCY.TV radio. This has been the Ochelli Effect, and of course, every Tuesday is Tuesday night with the Liberty Beacon. You can find Terry's stuff, just so you know how to spell her name. It's T-E-R-E, Joyce, J-O-Y-C-E, and the Freedom of Joyce label is on her blog, her radio show, and soon to be a one-woman show as well. So I suggest you keep a lookout for that. And, of course, dig back, look at YouTube, and check her out on Last Comic Standing and various other places. And, hey, if it so strikes you, what is the title of that adult film, by the way?
Oh, it's called Hardcore Circus. That's a Hustler movie. And then I also wrote another one called Alice, and they're both directed by Erica McLean,
Awesome.
McLean.
Absolutely, and check it all out, man. Everything is out there in one way or another, and eventually we might actually get to some solutions and some truths that they don't want to necessarily feed us through the alphabet agencies and networks. So, again, thanks so much, Terry, and if there's anything you want to throw out there at the last moment, go right ahead.
No, I mean, that's it. I mean, I'm on Facebook, TERE Joyce. Send me a friend request. That's about it. And happy holidays to everyone out there, and Happy New Year.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be broadcasting live on Christmas, of course. I'm going to do one of the weirdest Christmas shows you ever heard in your life. We're going to talk about the Antichrist. That's correct. We're going to talk about the Antichrist on Christmas because I'm live and I can. So, there you go. But anyway, thanks again, Terry, and just any second now that very, very obnoxious bumper of mine is going to kick in, and I think Primer Time follows me on UCY here, so stick around, especially if you're into gun stuff. Definitely, these guys are people to listen to. Thanks again, everybody. Good night.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. You know, I read the stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know what that was. Doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not just Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have